For 2.5 years of the Trump presidency, we finally spotted the great orange whale.
We're gonna impeach the motherfucker.
Quid pro quo.
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 No quid pro quo. Do you need a quid pro quo?
What exactly is a quid pro quo, and is it illegal?
Quid pro quo is a Latin phrase. Basically, it means you're trying to get someone to do something for you in exchange for something else.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning back into, I'm not sure what episode we're on of Genuine Questions, but today's topic is going to be the first time that they impeached Donald Trump. And there's a whole lot of stuff that I want to go over on this one, but the reason that I think it is relevant and important is because if you paid attention to the impeachment proceedings, you would have noticed that they completely contradict the Russian collusion story that Donald Trump was working with Vladimir Putin. They both can't be true. And they never address that discrepancy. And I want to get into this and show you here what I'm talking about, because this whole thing makes the Democrats, in my opinion, look very corrupt. We're going to get started by watching this montage that shows you how long the Democratic Party has been working on impeaching Trump. And impeachment is supposed to be for when a president is abusing their power when they're in office, and the way to get him removed. And the Democrats have started talking about impeaching Trump before he ever took office. And so in the first clip here in this montage we're going to watch, we're going to see literally his whole entire presidency, everything that Trump did, they thought it was grounds for impeachment. And if everything is grounds for impeachment, then nothing is grounds for impeachment.
Who I may well be voting to impeach.
Donald Trump has already done a number of things which legitimately raise the question of impeachment.
I don't respect this president, and I will fight every day until he is impeached.
That is grounds to start impeachment proceedings. Those are grounds to start impeachment. Those are grounds to start impeachment proceedings. And yes, I think that's grounds to start impeachment proceedings.
I rise today, Mr. Speaker, to call for the impeachment of the President of the United States of America.
I continue to say, impeach him! Impeach 45! Impeach 45!
So we're calling upon the House to begin impeachment hearings immediately.
On the impeachment of Donald Trump, would you vote yes or no?
I would vote yes.
I would vote to impeach.
Because we're gonna go in there, we're gonna impeach the motherfucker.
But the fact is, I introduced articles of impeachment in July of 2017.
If we don't impeach this president, he will get reelected.
My oath requires me to be for impeachment, have an impeachment hearing. He needs the scarlet eye on his chest.
Representatives should begin impeachment proceedings against this president.
It is time to bring impeachment charges against him. Bring impeachment charges.
My personal view is that he richly deserves impeachment.
I'm here at an impeachment rally, and we are ready to impeach them!
So before we get into what they finally found that they could impeach Trump for, just want to point out that the witnesses that will be interviewed in this clip, in these clips I'll show, are all people who are there as witnesses on behalf of the Democrats. So if you watch these entire proceedings, these people don't have anything nice to say about Donald Trump. And so before we get into all of that, I just want to point out here that the Russian collusion story that we had talked about before, for the 2 years prior to this impeachment, was that Donald Trump was selected by Vladimir Putin to be a Manchurian candidate, secret agent working on behalf of Russia. And you'll hear in this testimony that I'm about to show that Donald Trump actually provided more aid to the Ukrainian government than any administration before him, and that aid was to help them fight Russia. The Trump administration provided them missiles or javelins that are used to blow up Russian tanks. So if anyone can explain to me in the comments of this YouTube video how it makes sense that Putin's stooge would give Putin's enemies missiles to blow up Putin's tanks, and Putin's not mad about that. I would love to hear it, because I can't figure that one out for myself.
In terms of defensive lethal aid, which you were an advocate for, that was not provided by President Obama. It was provided by President Trump.
That's correct.
You've testified that during your tenure as ambassador, America's policy actually got stronger toward Ukraine. Is that accurate?
With the provision of javelins to the Ukrainian military, yes, that was really positive.
And why was that important?
They are obviously tank busters, and so if the war with Russia all of a sudden accelerated in some way and tanks come over the horizon, javelins are a very serious weapon to deal with that. That's number one. But really the more important issue is the symbolism of it, that the United States is providing javelins to Ukraine. That makes Ukraine's adversaries think twice.
And isn't it the case that the Trump administration has indeed provided substantial aid to Ukraine in the form of defensive lethal aid, correct?
That is correct.
And that is more so than the Obama administration, correct?
Yes.
And those javelins were not made available to Ukraine under the Obama administration?
They were not.
So Donald Trump was accused of calling the Ukrainian president and asking him to start an investigation into Joe Biden. And he was going to withhold this military aid, again, used to fight Russia, who Trump allegedly works for, and was giving them aid. Trump is going to withhold that aid unless they start an investigation into Joe Biden. And here is the Democratic attorney reading that relevant portion from the Trump Ukrainian president's phone call transcript.
President Trump says the other thing. There's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that. So whatever you can do with the Attorney General would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution. So if you can look into it, it sounds horrible to me.
So from my standpoint, if the chief law enforcement of the country, which at that time would have been Trump, is supposed to be enforcing the law, and if there is somebody out there who is doing something corrupt, then that is fine for the president to launch that investigation. If Trump is trying to get these people to make up false allegations about his political opponent so he can throw his political opponent in jail and not have to run against him, then yes, that obviously is wildly corrupt, and I'm not in favor of that. So, but it is a fine line. Trump asking for that investigation in and of itself, to me, is not a problem. So, and I would also think it's interesting to point out that if it is illegal to launch an investigation into your political opponent, then how were they able to do that against Donald Trump when he was running for president and they launched this investigation that he may or may not be working for Vladimir Putin? Is that not the same thing? I would think that it is, except in the case of Donald Trump working for Russia, there's absolutely no evidence that any of that was true. And as we're going to hear in this next clip, there is a video clip of Joe Biden doing exactly what Donald Trump just said that he did, just going around bragging about stopping the prosecution. So before we dive into exactly what Joe Biden was trying to do, let's just listen to the video for ourselves of him bragging about getting this prosecutor fired in exchange for withholding aid. Again, which is exactly what they're mad at Trump for doing, that he won't give the Ukrainians aid unless they investigate Biden, that is the crime, that he is withholding aid. And we're going to listen to Joe Biden brag about withholding $1 billion to the Ukrainians unless they fire a prosecutor.
I remember going over convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. Said, "No," I said, "I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion." They said, "You have no authority. You're not the president." The president said, I said, "Call him." I said, "I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion." I said, "You're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here." And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, "I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money." Well, son of a bitch. Got fired.
So that was the video in question that Trump was referring to, where Biden is bragging about getting this prosecutor fired. And Biden's excuse for this is that he fired this prosecutor because the United States and every other country in the world wanted this prosecutor fired because he wasn't investigating corruption. And the corruption that he was not investigating, this is undisputed by both the left and the right, the corrupt company in question is a company called Burisma. And Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, worked on the board of Burisma, getting paid, by the most conservative estimate I can find, $50,000 a month. There are reports out there that that number is higher, but in the interest of fairness and not exaggerating, $50,000 is still a lot of money. And my first question with all of this is, it is undisputed by both sides that Burisma is the company in question that is corrupt, and according to Joe Biden, it is in such U.S. interests, U.S. foreign policy interests, that this company does get investigated, that he has to fire the prosecutor who's not doing it. I would like to know why his son was on the board of this admittedly corrupt company. Hunter Biden did not leave the board of Burisma until, I believe, 2019. So if this company is so corrupt that it is that important to U.S. interests to get it investigated, why is your son working for them? So now we will listen to some testimony where these witnesses discuss what this corruption with Burisma actually was all about, and then we'll talk about that after the video.
This company, Burisma, involved in lots of criminal activity, correct?
I would say that it's the largest private gas producer in the country, and its business reputation is mixed.
The company Burisma, its leader, Zlochevsky, he has a little bit of a storied history of corruption, doesn't he?
Mr. Zlochevsky was Minister of Energy from 2010 to 2012 under the pro-Russian government, and he used his regulatory authority to award gas exploration licenses to companies that he himself controlled. That would be considered an act of corruption in my view, yes.
And certainly self-dealing.
Certainly self-dealing and self-enriching. To summarize, we thought that Mykola Zlochevsky had stolen money. We thought a prosecutor had taken a bribe to shut the case, and those were our main concerns.
So the owner of Burisma is getting investigated, and he bribes a prosecutor into shutting down the case. That is what they want investigated. And right around this time this investigation starts, Burisma hires Hunter Biden onto their board. So a big defense that you will see a debunking or a fact check of this in the news will tell you that this is fake because Hunter Biden did not join the board of Burisma until after that allegation of corruption occurred, which is true. I don't think that Hunter Biden was the one working for Burisma who was doing the corruption. I think that Burisma paid to get this investigation shut down, and then in order to cover their ass, they start paying Joe Biden's son $50,000 a month to keep it shut down. We'll let you get away with what you're doing here if you hire my son, you pay him. That's the money laundering scheme. That's why Hunter Biden joined the board when he did, and why, in spite of having absolutely no expertise in Ukrainian energy, they decided to hire the Vice President of the United States' son. So let's listen to a little testimony where they discuss that element of this investigation.
The bribe was paid in what year?
To the best of my knowledge, the case against Zlochevsky, the former minister, was shut down December of 2014.
Okay. And right around that time, Burisma starts adding officials to its board. Is that correct?
Understanding is, yes, that Zlochevsky invited a series of new individuals to join the board in 2014.
Who are some of the folks he added to the board?
Most prominent one in this context is Hunter Biden.
Okay, so Hunter Biden's added to the board of Burisma. Now, do you think that creates a problem that Burisma may be adding people to its board for protection purposes?
I believe that companies build their boards with a variety of reasons, not only to promote their business plans.
Was Hunter Biden a corporate governance expert?
I have no awareness or knowledge of what his background was and what he may have done on the board of Burisma.
So you don't know whether he has any business experience in Ukraine prior to joining Burisma's board?
I've heard nothing about prior experience.
Okay. Do you know if he speaks Ukrainian?
I do not.
Do you know if he possesses any other element other than the fact that he is the son of, at the time, the sitting vice president?
I do not.
He's getting paid $50,000 a month, but we don't know whether he had any experience, he had any, he spoke the language, or whether he moved to Ukraine, correct?
Correct.
And so the news and the Democratic Party will tell you that this is just a Trump conspiracy theory for anybody who is trying to dig up dirt about Hunter Biden and make this thing an issue when it's not. Even though on paper, this looks awful. I mean, again, just the fact that they are letting his son work on for a company that they admit is so corrupt that it's in every country in the world's interest to get this company investigated, that they're going to fire this prosecutor who's not doing it, and Joe Biden's son works for him. That if you are concerned about that, you are just a conspiracy theorist, Trump supporter who's just trying to, stir up trouble for the Democrats. But it's not just Trump supporters who are concerned about it. When this Ambassador Yovanovitch, the woman that they are questioning in some of these clips, she says when she got hired at the State Department as the ambassador under the Obama administration, she had to have an entire meeting about how to answer questions about the conflict of interest with Hunter Biden working for this company. And other people at the State Department, including George Kent, the guy with the bow tie, he raised concerns about the conflict of interest to the State Department. So these allegations of the appearance of conflict of interest with Hunter Biden working for Burisma started back under the Obama administration by members of the Obama administration. So to now turn around and say that this is just a bunch of Trump supporters making an issue out of nothing to stir up trouble is one of the, not the most, but one of the more disingenuous things that the media has done.
Given Hunter Biden's role in Burisma's board of directors, at some point you testified in your deposition that you expressed some concern to the vice president's office. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what did they do about that concern that you expressed?
You would have to ask people who worked in the office of vice president during 2015.
And Hunter Biden's role on the board of Burisma didn't cease, did it?
To the best of my knowledge, it didn't, and my concern was that there was the possibility of a perception of a conflict of interest.
The first time you personally became aware of Burisma was actually when you were being prepared by the Obama State Department for your Senate confirmation hearings. And this was in the form of practice questions and answers. This was your deposition. And you testified that in this particular practice Q&A with the Obama State Department, it wasn't just generally about Burisma and corruption, it was specifically about Hunter Biden and Burisma. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And the exact quote from your testimony, Ambassador, is, quote, "The way the question was phrased in this model Q&A was, what can you tell us about Hunter Biden's, being named to the board of Burisma?" So for the millions of Americans watching, President Obama's own State Department was so concerned about potential conflicts of interest from Hunter Biden's role at Burisma that they raised it themselves while prepping this wonderful ambassador nominee before her confirmation.
But I don't think that you gave us the answer or answers that the Obama-Biden State Department prepared you to give in response to that question. Do you remember what those answers were?
Yeah. It was something along the lines of, I would refer you to the Vice President's office on that.
Out of thousands of companies in the Ukraine, the only one that you recall the Obama-Biden State Department preparing you to answer questions about was the one where the Vice President's son was on the board. Is that fair?
Yes.
So in these corrupt nations, of which there are probably hundreds of corrupt individuals, hundreds of corrupt government officials, can you give me an example any time where the Vice President of the United States shows up and demands that a specific prosecutor be fired and gives them a 6-hour time limit to do that? Are you aware of that ever happening any other place? I guess the answer is no. And I just think it's interesting that out of hundreds of corrupt individuals, dozens of corrupt nations, that happened one time. And it happened with the individual whose son was being paid by the organization that was under investigation.
So in addition to why the hell is Hunter Biden working for Burisma, that is an admittedly corrupt company, the other key question that we have to get to the bottom of is, was this prosecutor investigating Burisma? And that's why he got fired, which is what Trump is alleging, that Joe Biden got this prosecutor fired because he was investigating this corrupt company that his son worked for. Or is Joe Biden telling the truth that this prosecutor was not investigating Burisma, the corrupt company that his son worked for, and they wanted to get him fired because they wanted to hire somebody who would investigate the corrupt company that his son worked for? And if you can't already tell the answer just based on that question, then good news, the witnesses actually already answered it for us. So here we're going to listen to them tell us that the prosecutor who got fired, the one Joe Biden was bragging about getting fired, he actually was the one who started the investigation into Burisma. Okay. So let's listen.
You are aware that the first case that the U.S., UK, and Ukraine investigators worked on was in fact against the owner of Burisma.
Yes.
And that was during the Obama administration.
Yes.
Prosecutor General Shokin was the one who had opened the investigation into Burisma, correct?
I think that's right, but I'm not actually sure.
He was in charge of it, at least at that point in time, as the Prosecutor General.
Mm-hmm.
Prosecutor General Shokin was fired by President Poroshenko, correct?
Yes.
So this prosecutor gets fired. And again, according to Joe Biden, because he's not investigating corruption. So you would think that if it was in U.S. foreign policy interest and the interest of, as Joe Biden says, basically every other country in the world, that you would want to, if you cared that much to get this guy fired because he's not investigating corruption, you would want to hire him with a person who is investigating that corruption. That's the entire point of getting this guy fired, is because it matters so much to get this company investigated. I think it would be the number one criteria of his replacement that you hire someone who will investigate Burisma. And as we will hear in this next clip, they didn't. The next prosecutor didn't do it either. So I have a hard time believing Joe Biden's story here that his son was allowed to work for this company that everybody knows is corrupt, and he wanted so badly to get this company investigated because the prosecutor just wasn't doing it, that he fired him and hired him with another prosecutor who also wasn't doing it. And then magically they just stopped caring about it. Regardless of politics, regardless of what you think of the issues, that story makes absolutely no sense. It is far more logical and likely that it's what Donald Trump is alleging, that Burisma is a corrupt company, that they hired Joe Biden's son, who has absolutely no experience doing this, to grease the wheels to make sure they weren't getting investigated. And then once this prosecutor started doing it, and allegedly he was going to be interviewing Hunter Biden the day after he got fired. And that is the only thing that I've heard that makes sense on why Joe Biden says that this guy had a 6-hour time limit to get fired. I've never heard Biden or anybody on the left acknowledge or give any explanation for why that 6-hour time limit was included. But if that part of the story is true, that this prosecutor was going to be questioning Hunter Biden the next day, well, then that certainly makes sense why Joe Biden says you have 6 hours to do this. So, in my opinion, regardless of what I think politically about the issues, Donald Trump's story here makes far more sense than anything that Joe Biden's saying. But let's listen to where they say, new prosecutor, not investigating Burisma either. That investigation is still open.
And in fact, if he helped to remove a corrupt Ukrainian prosecutor general who was not prosecuting enough corruption, that would increase the chances that corrupt companies in Ukraine would be investigated. Isn't that right?
One would think so.
And that could include Burisma, right?
Yes. The U.S. was welcoming of Mr. Lutsenko's nomination to the position of Prosecutor General because we were hoping he would clean that up. That, in fact, is not what happened.
And in your testimony, you said today the investigation was never formally closed because, quote, it's frankly useful to keep that company hanging on a hook, right? That's your quote.
Yeah, the Ukrainian investigation was never closed.
Partnered with the U.S. and the UK.
As I understand it.
So that's the summary of what Trump was accused of, and Biden's defense for it. Obviously, I'm going to come down on the side here that I think Donald Trump's version of events lines up with the facts and his testimonies much more accurately than anything that Joe Biden's saying. But I would like to also, before we go, point out just a couple of things about this whole impeachment process in general, because I do think the impeachment process is something that should be not done very often. That's why we have democracy, to let the people vote and make their decisions at the ballot box. Just watch these 3 clips here so you can see how the Democrats don't take this investigation, this impeachment hearing, seriously at all. And in the first one that we're going to watch, the Ambassador Yovanovitch, her entire testimony, she has said numerous times, if you watch the whole thing, that she actually doesn't have any information about the facts of that Trump's phone call with the Ukrainian ambassador at all. She had nothing to do with that. She doesn't know anything about that. This is all just her feelings about Donald Trump, and allegedly when she did her behind closed door deposition that wasn't on television, that she got so emotional talking about this stuff that she cried. And obviously to the Democrats, that's going to play really well on television if they can get this woman to cry for the cameras about how terribly Donald Trump treated her. And so here is a clip of one of these Democratic congresswomen who is pretending that they're interested and care about this woman and the effect that this has had on her, while they constantly keep asking her this question about how this has affected her family, despite the fact that this woman has politely said she does not want to talk about that on national television. But the Democrats don't care. They'd rather get their emotional soundbite out there for all of their viewers at home.
But I want to know about you personally and how this has affected you personally and your family.
Yeah. It's been a difficult time. I mean, I'm a private person. I don't want to put all that out there, but it's been a very, very difficult time because there's a question as to why the kind of campaign to get me out of Ukraine happened. Because all the president has to do is say he wants a different ambassador.
Does the president have the right to actually malign people's character? I mean, it may not be against any law, but I would think that it would be against decorum and decency.
All we have is our reputation. And so this has been a very painful period.
How has it affected your family?
I really don't want to get into that, but thank you for asking.
So now a very quick clip here of one of the biggest pieces of bullshit I've ever heard come out of a lawmaker's mouth, which this Democratic guy here is going to tell you that hearsay evidence is much better than having direct evidence of something. So if I come in and just tell you what happened and I provide absolutely no proof to back up what I'm saying, Democrats want you to believe that that is better than me actually having something to back it up. And if you believe that, if that doesn't set off any red flags for you, that just taking somebody at their word when they can provide absolutely nothing to back it up is somehow better than having proof, then I don't know what to tell you then.
I think the American public needs to be reminded that countless people have been convicted on hearsay. Hearsay can be much better evidence than direct, as we have learned in painful instances.
And lastly, here, I want to play the clip of the woman who came on who was supposed to be the Democrats' constitutional expert on impeachment. And she is supposed to be telling us the ways that Donald Trump has violated the Constitution and why he deserves to be impeached. And she is the one who makes the comment about Donald Trump's son. And I actually disagree or think that the people on the right missed the point of her testimony here because they wanted to bash her as a bad person for making fun of Trump's son. And as you will hear with what she's about to say, she's not making fun of Donald Trump's son. She is making fun of Donald Trump's ego by naming his son Barron. And my problem with her is that you are supposed to be an impartial, constitutional impeachment expert delivering us the facts about what Donald Trump has done as president that warrants him being impeached. And she could not sit there for 45 minutes and keep her mouth shut about how much she hates Donald Trump personally. So if she can't do that, if she can't stick to the Constitution and has to spend her time up on the witness stand talking about her personal issues with his ego, then I don't care what she has to say. She is not an impartial constitutional expert. She's a partisan political hack. And her opinion is irrelevant to me.
And contrary to what President Trump has said, Article 2 does not give him the power to do anything he wants. And I'll just give you one example that shows you the difference between him and a king, which is the Constitution says there can be no titles of nobility. So while the president can name his son Baron, he can't make him a baron.
Which again has absolutely nothing to do with the Constitution or anything that Donald Trump has done as president. Naming his son Barron 14 years ago is not him trying to declare himself a king while he's in the Oval Office. And it blows my mind that I think well-intended supporters of the Democratic Party can't see through that. To wind it up here, I just want to touch a little bit more on Hunter Biden because his story is still relevant and ongoing present day right now in 2021, now that his dad is president. These get-rich money laundering schemes, whatever they are that benefit Hunter Biden, they have kicked back up again now that Joe Biden is president. And two clips that I want to show you here. First, a way that Hunter Biden is trying to gaslight everybody into feeling sorry for him for playing on the fact that a lot of American families are having addiction issues with this opioid crisis and trying to get people to sympathize with him because they also have those struggles in their family. And so here he is on CBS trying to telling everybody how he was, just so down and out, with his crack addiction that he was crawling on the floor, combing through the carpet, looking for, Parmesan cheese to smoke, to try to make himself seem like every the everyday man with the addiction issue. He's just a regular person like everybody else going through a hard time. But if you remember from what we just said, by the most conservative estimate, he was making $50,000 a month, and that is just from his work on the board of Burisma. We don't know what other businesses that he was involved in where he was making this kind of money. So I don't believe for a second that Hunter Biden was so hurting for cash that he needed to smoke Parmesan cheese crumbs to get his fix. He can afford crack, and it's ridiculous that he is sitting here trying to make you forget about how his corrupt business dealings that were netting him a lot of cash.
You know, I spent more time on my hands and knees picking through rugs, smoking anything that even remotely resembled crack cocaine. I probably smoked more Parmesan cheese than anyone that you know, I'm sure, Tracy.
The latest scam on how Hunter Biden is making money is his art career. Just a few short years ago, he was a crackhead, combing through the carpet for Parmesan cheese to smoke, and now he is a flourishing artist with paintings that sell for about $500,000. And thinking people would realize that these people don't actually want to buy Hunter Biden's art. This is a way to do money laundering or perhaps buy access to his father. Similar to the videos that we did a few episodes back about the Clinton Foundation and how you would make a donation to the Clinton Foundation and then you would get favors done for you in return from the State Department. This is a way to buy a piece of art from Hunter Biden, and then you get access to his dad as the President of the United States. And when this news came out that Hunter Biden was now selling paintings for $500,000 a pop, the White House comes out and says that in an effort to be transparent about all of this, everybody who buys Hunter Biden's art now will be anonymous. They won't know who the buyers are, so that way they can't give the buyers special favors. When in actuality, all that does is prevent us, the American people, or any watchdog associations or oversight committees from being able to track whether or not the purchasers of these paintings got special treatment. Because if the public doesn't know who it is, then the public can't follow it. But there's nothing that you could tell me that would make me believe that Joe and Hunter Biden don't know who's buying his paintings. But fortunately now, we're never going to know. And so I will just show this one last clip of Jimmy Dore breaking down this scheme for all of us to enjoy.
White House defends role in Hunter Biden art sale. This is going to be a little stunning. Okay, here we go. Paintings by Hunter Biden are expected to fetch up to $500,000 apiece at an auction this autumn. Any buyers will be kept anonymous to stop them seeking political influence with the Bidens, the White House says. The younger Biden's business dealings in Ukraine, China, and elsewhere have often been held up by Republican critics as a conflict of interest for his father, which both Bidens deny. Walter Schaub, who served as ethics chief under President Obama, rejected the White House's claim that the arrangement would ensure transparency. So they're doing shady stuff again for Hunter Biden to make money. So instead of disclosing who was paying outrageous sums for Hunter Biden's artwork so that we could monitor whether the purchases are gaining access to government, the White House tried to make sure that we will never know who they are. That's very disappointing. So you see what you want to know who's giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to Hunter Biden. You want to know who that is. The White House is going to keep that secret.
So that's all I have for this episode of Genuine Questions. Join us on the next one because we are going to talk just a little bit more about another aspect of this impeachment hearing that I think might unlock the answer as to how Joe Biden wound up being the Democratic nominee and ultimately now the commander-in-chief.
They are blind to the blaring signs of corruption surrounding Hunter Biden's well-paid position on the board of a corrupt Ukrainian company, while his father served as vice president and point man for Ukraine issues in the Obama administration. Why did Burisma hire Hunter Biden? What did he do for them? And did his position affect any government actions under the Obama administration?
Quid pro quos happen all the time in foreign policy. Congress has to determine more. If there was a quid pro quo, was it for a corrupt or an improper purpose? If the investigation of Biden was a legitimate corruption investigation, it might be a proper purpose.
Justice, the justice system, whether it's the cops on the beat, whether it's investigators, whether it is prosecutors, whether it is judges, are used as a tool of the political system to be used against your political adversaries. Classic for an intelligence officer to try to throw off the scent and create an alternative narrative that maybe might get picked up and get some credence.